Victor Pineda is a middle-aged man, Venezuelan-born, with medium skin tone, using a power wheelchair and a nasal oxygen device.
My name is Dr. Victor Pineda, and I'm the executive director of the Historic Center for Independent Living in Berkeley. I was one of the original people that helped negotiate the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We could not be facing a bigger threat than we are today. The rights and the progress that have been made over the last 50 years in the United States are on the verge of being eviscerated. That means that there is a fundamental failure in terms of how we collectively have been able to engage broadly in presenting a unified vision of what disability looks like today and in the future. The CIL in Berkeley was one of these radical, inventive, innovative experiments where Judy Heumann and Roberts and many others decided to create a model that challenged the institutional bias that people with disabilities would need to live in institutions or nursing homes. And it would sort of challenge this dominant idea that people with disabilities were sick or frail or vulnerable. And they kept saying, we don't need charity. We need rights. And when the US government in the 70s passed the 1973 Rehab Act, but would not enforce Section 504 that prohibited discrimination on the basis of disability, and any entity receiving federal funding could, in essence, be sued for discriminating against people with disabilities. The lack of regulations, the lack of action, forced people across the country to protest. And in April of 1977, almost a dozen protests erupted. For 28 days, people with disabilities basically held together and partnered with many other coalitions to demand that the government affirm and take action on our rights. That victory gave us power and visibility and led eventually to the passage of the ADA. And so we're now living 35 years after the ADA and 54 years since the establishment of this radical group in Berkeley that created a model for independent living. And we're facing major setbacks. However, after the ADA was passed, disability activists like myself realized we can't just live in an island. Like, the US can't be the only model for disability rights. And so a lot of the principles that we developed in the US were shared at the UN in a series of negotiations that led to the passage of the ADA. And for the last 18 years, over 190 countries have ended up ratifying and passing legislation and investing in more equitable services. We are now unleashing a new technology, which is artificial intelligence. And it'll be informed by every artifact that we create. And if the disability community does not create media and content, those assistive technologies, those engines of artificial cognitive processing will leave us out. So it's very important that our stories inform our collective evolution. And the human experience is nothing without the disability experience. It's what is innovative, and it's what has stimulated innovations in technology. It's what has stimulated moments of war and peace and political revolution. So I really think that understanding disability as a human experience will allow us to, again, differentiate ourselves from this emerging technology, because if the technology can outperform humans on cognitive tasks, then what do we have and what do we hold that's special? And that is the human experience, and disability is inseparable of it. So there's a day that's called Civil Society Forum. And it happens before all the member states and governments show up. And what was remarkable was how many people and how many organizations and how many countries have raised the issue of artificial intelligence as a tremendous assistive technology, but also as a threat. And so this is a defining moment for us to understand technology governance, to understand how our economy and political systems are changing, and to get ahead of that so that we are actually creating the template for this new emerging set of systems and institutions that will replace a lot of the systems that are currently under threat and attack. So we need to be really aware on how value is created, what is the disability story, what is the value of our lived experience to, and ultimately, how do we each have the opportunity to express ourselves? And how do we unlock the collective potential of humanity, whether or not you have difficulty seeing, hearing, moving around without assistance, whether you have difficulty remembering? Those lived experiences are not liabilities in and of themselves. The failure comes when society fails to create the systems that unlock our potential. So I'm very excited about this initiative that you're leading, and very excited about continuing to partner with the Center for Independent Living as one of the first models of disability rights. There are over 408 independent living centers that grew out of the one that I'm leading at Berkeley, with 730 field offices. The independent living centers in Alaska fly up to the Arctic Circle to deliver services for people with disabilities in rural parts of the country, while some countries might take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. Some other countries are just marching ahead on this. So I think it's good to have this global approach and to see a global snapshot. But ultimately, we each have a role to play.